Was it so terrible to make one joke at my own anniversary party? How did a toast meant to be funny destroy my marriage, my friendships, and my standing in our entire neighbourhood? I thought laughter at my husband's expense was confidence, but the quiet that replaced it told a different story about who I truly was. My name is Andine Lacroix. I am 32 years old, and I work as the office manager at a small architecture firm where I answer phones, organise schedules, and quietly believe that I am the most interesting person in every room I enter. I have been married for 7 years to Mitchell Lacroix, Mitch, who is 35 and works as a high school guidance counsellor, and he is the kind of man that other women call dependable, when what they really mean is predictable, safe, and entirely too content with a life that runs on routine. I am not ungrateful. I am simply aware that a woman who does not celebrate herself will never be celebrated by anyone else. And I have spent the last 2 months planning our 7th wedding anniversary party at the Greenfield Community Centre to prove exactly that. Before we dive in, if you want more stories like this, please like and subscribe. Your support helps me bring even more great stories for my favourite subscribers. Thank you for the support, my lovely boys. And now let's continue. On a Saturday afternoon, 3 weeks before the party, I stood in the community centre's main room inspecting the layout. Parquet floor, a raised platform with a microphone stand at the far end, tall windows letting in flat October light. The catering manager walked me through the dessert station, a marble-topped cart where creme brulee would be torched tableside, and the burnt caramel smell from the test batch drifted across the room in sweet, acrid waves that I associated with celebration rather than warning. I tested the microphone and practiced a line from the toast I was drafting in my phone's notes app. Something about my body count before marriage that I thought was hilarious and that Mitch would have called inappropriate if he had been there. Which he was not, because I told him the walkthrough was just logistics. He was home with our 6-year-old son Hugo, building a birdhouse in the garage. I chose the venue, the menu, the music, and the guest list. Mitch's contribution was his credit card and his agreement to wear the suit I picked. 3 months before all of this, I met Thomas Garza at the gym. He was the new evening personal trainer, tall, easy laugh, the kind of confidence that made a room feel smaller in a good way. I changed my schedule to match his Tuesday and Thursday 7 p.m. sessions, saved his contact under a fire emoji, and started slipping my wedding ring into my gym bag's zipper pocket before each session because, I told myself, metal scratches the barbells. 2 weeks before the walkthrough, Thomas asked if I wanted to grab a drink after a Thursday session, and we went to a cocktail lounge 6 blocks from the gym. I told Mitch I was at my best friend Dana's apartment. The joint credit card registered a charge at 11:45 p.m., $47 for 2 cocktails and a dessert. I told myself that sharing a drink with a trainer after a workout is something millions of women do without it becoming a crisis. That Saturday night, in our bedroom at 10:20, Mitch sat against the headboard, reading while I scrolled through party rental options at the dresser. He mentioned the cocktail lounge charge, the name, the amount, the 11:45 p.m. timestamp, and said it appeared on the same night I told him I was at Dana's. But Dana had posted a home cooking story on Instagram at 10:30 that evening, which meant Dana was not at any lounge at 11:45. He asked who was sitting across from me, because $47 for 2 cocktails and a dessert is clearly a bill for 2. I sighed and said I stopped at the lounge alone after leaving Dana's early because she had a headache, and the dessert was for me, and the second cocktail was a refill, and the fact that he was cross-referencing my credit card with Dana's Instagram was the kind of surveillance that makes women feel monitored instead of loved. I put my phone face down on the dresser. A notification slid across the screen as it went dark, a fire emoji followed by a thumbs up, and then the light disappeared. He did not raise his voice. He mentioned the fire emoji he glimpsed before the screen went dark, said it was not a contact name he recognized, and asked who it belonged to and whether that person was the one who sat across from me at the lounge on Thursday. He pointed out that my wedding ring had been off during my last 3 gym sessions. He noticed the tan line shifting and said the combination of the ring, the emoji contact, and the lounge charge created a picture he could not ignore. He offered to go to the gym with me next Tuesday, not to monitor me, but because they used to work out together before Hugo was born. I told him he sounded like a detective from a crime podcast, that the fire emoji was my trainer's contact name because Tomas was on fire at his job, and that I would not rearrange my fitness routine to babysit his insecurities. The ring sat on the dresser beside a crumpled gym receipt, its ink already fading at the edges where it had been folded in a damp pocket. Sunday morning, while I was in the shower, Mitch's phone showed him a calendar reminder on my phone screen that had buzzed while it was still unlocked from my earlier scrolling. Grindstone Cafe, 4 p.m, confirmed. It was not on our shared calendar. He read it from the doorway, turned back to the kitchen, and made Hugo scrambled eggs. That evening, he asked casually what I did after brunch with Dana, and I said errands. He nodded. He went to bed at 9:15, 45 minutes earlier than usual, and when I came to bed at 10:30, his phone was face down on the nightstand, a contact renamed as a single balance scale emoji visible for half a second before the screen dimmed. I did not see it. I plugged in my charger and opened Tomas's chat under the fire emoji. His last message read that Tuesday's session was confirmed, same time Thursday. I sent a winking emoji, put the phone under my pillow, and told myself everything was under control. On Wednesday evening at 9:18, with Hugo asleep and Mitch grading papers in the living room below, I stood on our bedroom balcony and recorded a voice note to Dana that lasted 2 minutes and 14 seconds. I described Mitch's private habits in mocking detail, his predictability, his hesitation, his inability to match the energy I experienced during my Thursday drink with Thomas. I compared the two men by name, laughing between sentences, and said the anniversary toast I was writing would be tame compared to what I could really tell people. I sent the note, poured wine, and told myself that a woman who cannot vent to her best friend will swallow disappointment until it poisons everything. Dana replied with a 15-second giggle chain that validated every word. The next afternoon, Dana made a mistake that she would never be able to undo. She was assembling a recipe audio for a group chat called Sunday Supper Club and selected the wrong file. My voice note, 2 minutes and 14 seconds of me mocking my husband by name and comparing him to my trainer, landed in a thread with 7 contacts, including Celia Voss, a 68-year-old family friend who had known both our families for decades, and Phoebe Lacroix, Mitch's 29-year-old sister. Dana realized the error within 10 minutes, deleted the message from her side, and texted me saying she might have sent my voice thing to the wrong group but was deleting it and not to worry. I told her it was fine because nobody listens to voice notes anyway, and I did not ask which group, which contacts, or whether the deletion actually worked on other people's phones. Friday morning at 6:30, Phoebe opened the note in her car in the hospital parking garage before her shift as a nurse practitioner. She heard my voice, heard Mitch's name, heard the comparison to Thomas, heard the laughter. She screenshotted the thread showing the sender and timestamp and saved it to a locked album. That same evening at 10:05, Celia listened to the note while watering her ferns in her living room. She played it twice, saved it, and sat in her armchair for a long time without moving. She did not call me. She did not call Mitch. Not yet. On Friday, my gym session registered a $120 charge for a personal training, a premium session, at 7:15 p.m. Mitch saw the notification while helping Hugo with reading homework. The amount was double the usual fee. He did not mention it when I came home at 8:45 with flushed cheeks and a gym bag. He asked how the session was and I said it was intense, and the words sat between us in the kitchen like a coin balanced on its edge. After Mitch's Monday meeting, his calendar had shown Grindstone Cafe 4 p.m. He returned home calmer than I had seen him in weeks. He did not mention the lounge charge, the gym fee, or the fire emoji. He helped Hugo with bath time, read him a longer story than usual, and watched a documentary in the living room without inviting me to join. When I sat beside him, he did not shift toward me. His eyes carried a new distance. Not anger, but the flat clarity of someone rechecking arithmetic they had previously trusted. He went to bed at 9 without saying goodnight. I told myself his silence was a punishment tactic. Tuesday morning at 7:10, while Hugo ate cereal at the kitchen table, Mitch mentioned the premium session charge, the exact amount, the 7:15 p.m. timestamp, and the fact that the gym's website listed the service as a one-on-one extended session in a private studio room. He asked what the premium session included that the regular one did not. He asked me to name specific exercises from the session, because if it was just a longer workout, the standard $60 fee would cover it. I set my coffee mug down hard enough that the liquid swayed, and I told him a husband who audits gym invoices wants to own his wife's body, not share it. The coffee left a wet ring on the granite counter, and neither of us wiped it away. 5 minutes later, after Hugo left to brush his teeth, Mitch mentioned that the premium session took place in Studio B, which the gym's public booking system listed as a private room, separate from the main training floor. He asked whether any other client was present, or whether I was alone with Thomas behind a closed door at 7 on a Friday evening. He suggested I switch to group classes for a month, not a ban, but a reset, and offered to join a weekend class together. I told him men always sexualize a woman's relationship with her trainer and that Studio B was a stretching room, not a bedroom. The kitchen faucet sputtered once before the water ran clear as I rinsed Hugo's cereal bowl. That afternoon at my reception desk, I showed 2 co-workers the toast I was rehearsing. The body count joke and the guided tour comparison, softened slightly for a workplace audience but still clearly about Mitch. My co-worker Janine laughed uncomfortably. Marcus did not laugh at all and said he hoped I was not planning to say that in front of Mitch's family. I told him comedy is not confession, and anyone who could not take a joke should stay home. Wednesday evening, I checked the shared laptop to order party favors and found a browser tab from an earlier session. Voice recording legal admissibility. The search results showed legal blogs and FAQ pages about consent laws and audio evidence. I closed the tab and opened one for champagne glass charms instead. I told myself Mitch was probably researching something for a student's parent dispute at work. But that night in bed, the phrase voice recording admissibility drifted behind my eyelids, and the faint hum of the garage refrigerator beneath the floor sounded less like background noise and more like a machine that had been running longer than I knew. On Thursday, Phoebe texted Mitch that she had something he needed to hear and asked him to come to her apartment on Saturday without me. The anniversary party was on a Saturday evening, and the community centre hall had been transformed into exactly the celebration I designed. White tablecloths, autumn dahlia centerpieces, Edison bulbs strung from the ceiling beams, and the dessert station at the far wall where the caterer was already torching crème brûlée, filling the room with that same burnt caramel smell that had been there during my walkthrough. 60 guests filled the space, family, friends, neighbours, colleagues from both my firm and Mitch's school. Hugo sat at a children's table near the stage in a tiny blazer I picked out, colouring with 2 other kids. Mitch wore the charcoal suit I selected, greeting guests with the warm handshake of a man who spends his days making anxious teenagers feel heard. I circulated in a fitted emerald dress, champagne flute in hand, touching arms and laughing at a volume designed to reach every corner. At 7:45, I took the microphone. I thanked everyone for coming, mentioned the decorations, and opened with a joke about Mitch bringing coupons on our first date. Mild laughter. I built momentum, a line about his guidance counselor voice during arguments, how he once asked me to use I statements during a fight about laundry. Warmer laughter. Then the pivot. I said that before I married Mitch, I had lived a full life, and I paused long enough for the phrase to settle, and then I said my number of dating partners before the wedding would beat anyone in this room, including the DJ. I gestured at the DJ booth. Some people laughed. Others exchanged glances. I kept going. I said Mitch was a wonderful father and a good provider, but between us, and I leaned into the microphone, he was a guided tour when I booked an adventure. I winked. I sipped champagne. The burnt caramel smell drifted past the microphone stand, and the silence that followed had a texture, dense and warm and tinged with something burning. Gerald Lacroix, Mitch's 63-year-old father, stood near the coat check counter alcove holding his engraved champagne flute. Crystal gold script reading M and O, 7 years. When I delivered the guided tour line, he set the flute on the counter. The bass met the wood with a single clear note, precise and deliberate, the sound of a man putting something down for the last time. Martine, Mitch's mother, closed her eyes at her table. Celia Voss stood motionless in the alcove 6 feet from Gerald, her handbag strap over her wrist, watching the room with the trained stillness of someone who spent 30 years in a courthouse. Mitch stood beside the microphone with his hands clasped. His smile had not technically left his face, but it was the kind of smile that stays standing after the structure beneath it has shifted. He did not take the microphone. He stepped off the platform, walked to the bar and asked for water. A cousin named Vera recorded the toast on her phone, 2 minutes and 41 seconds. In the hallway near the restrooms at 9:10, Mitch asked whether the guided tour line was something I wrote in advance or whether it came to me in the moment, because the Notes app draft I showed my co-workers last week contained similar language. He asked me to name one person in that room who heard the toast and walked away with more respect for him as a husband or a father. He referenced the burnt caramel smell from the dessert station drifting past the microphone while I spoke, and said that smell would now be permanently connected in his memory to the moment his wife told 60 people he was inadequate. He said he would not attend another social event where his private life served as my comedy material. He suggested I go back to the room, take the microphone, and say one sincere thing about our marriage that Hugo would be proud to hear someday. I laughed and told him Dana loved the toast, that Vera recorded it because it was iconic, and that hiding by the water fountain was making people ask questions. In the car at 11:05, Hugo asleep in the back seat, the interior smelling faintly of crème brûlée that had clung to my dress when I leaned against the dessert cart for a photo, Mitch tried once more. He mentioned that during the party's last hour, I told a group near the photo booth that Mitch was the world's safest man, and that I sometimes wondered what life would be like with a few more surprises, and 2 of his school colleagues, Mrs. Devlin and Mr. Saito, were standing in that group. He asked what I expected to happen Monday morning when those colleagues walked into his guidance office carrying that story, and how that image would affect parents' trust in him as a counsellor. He said his professional reputation was not material for my comedy set. He suggested I send Mrs. Devlin and Mr. Sato a brief, genuine message acknowledging the toast went too far. I told him I was not going to apologise to his co-workers for being funny at my own party, and if his reputation was so fragile it could not survive one toast, the reputation was never real. He started the engine. The headlights hit the community centre's brick facade, and the congratulations banner caught the light for 1 second before we drove home in a silence so complete that Hugo's soft breathing from the back seat sounded louder than anything I had said at the microphone. After his Monday meeting, Grindstone Cafe, 7:15 a.m., Mitch moved his wallet and keys from the kitchen counter to the inside pocket of his work bag, which he now kept in the garage. He opened mail alone at the front door. He asked over dinner whether the mortgage autopay was linked to the joint account. I said yes. He nodded without follow-up. That Tuesday, Vera posted the toast video to a private family group chat. Within an hour, 4 members left the group. One of Mitch's aunts wrote that this was not funny but cruelty. Gerald asked Vera to delete it. She did, but 3 phones had already saved it. That night, Phoebe texted Mitch 2 words: "This Saturday." Gerald's 64th birthday dinner was at Luciano's, a red brick Italian restaurant with checkered tablecloths and candle jars on every table. and the long table was set for 12 with garlic bread between the candle flames and the smell of roasted tomato drifting from the open kitchen. Hugo sat in a booster seat between Mitch and me, tearing a breadstick into pieces, and the atmosphere was warm enough on the surface that I told myself the anniversary party had blown over and the family was resetting. Several relatives who were at the toast had not made eye contact with me since we sat down, but I narrated that as old-fashioned discomfort, not judgment. Then Hugo said it. He was breaking his breadstick when he announced, in his clear 6-year-old voice, that Mommy told Auntie Dana that Daddy is boring in the dark. Martine's fork scraped to a stop against her plate. Gerald lowered the birthday card he was reading. Phoebe looked at me with an expression that held no surprise at all, only confirmation. Celia, seated at the far end, placed her water glass down with the care of someone cataloguing a moment for later retrieval. Mitch bent toward Hugo, steady and warm, and said something about grown-ups saying silly things on the phone, and Hugo went back to his breadstick. The candle jars flickered, and the wood fire crackle from the open kitchen filled the silence where the birthday singing should have been. In the parking lot at 8:45, under the pink buzz of Luciano's neon sign, Mitch referenced the exact phrase, boring in the dark, and said a 6-year-old did not create that sentence. He absorbed it from a phone call close enough for a child in a hallway to hear. He asked how many times I had spoken to Dana about their private life on speakerphone while Hugo was awake. He asked which room I was in when I recorded the voice note, because if the bedroom door was open and Hugo was in the hallway, that conversation was not private. It was broadcast. He said Hugo's words at that table changed this from a marriage problem to a parenting concern, and he would not allow their son to carry content no child should know. He proposed that all personal phone calls happen behind a closed door with Hugo verified asleep, and that the rule applied to both of them equally. My eyes welled up, fast and strategic. I said I could not believe he was blaming me for a child's random comment, that Hugo probably heard boring in the dark from a cartoon villain, and that a father who uses his child's words as evidence is not protecting the family, but prosecuting it. I asked if he understood how it felt to be surrounded by people all secretly judging me. The neon sign buzzed above us, a faint, unsteady pink pulse, and Mitch watched my tears without moving toward me for 10 seconds, longer than he had ever waited before responding to my crying. On Sunday, Phoebe played the voice note for Mitch at her apartment. He listened for 2 minutes and 14 seconds without interrupting. When it ended, he nodded once and asked her to save the file and the screenshot of the group thread with the sender name and timestamp. She told him Celia also had a copy and had created a written chronology. Mitch sat with his hands folded and said he would handle things the right way. Monday evening, after Hugo was at a playdate, I sat across from Mitch at the kitchen table and tried a new approach. I said the weekend broke my heart. I said I was being treated as a villain for being honest. I offered a gesture. I would stop using speakerphone for personal calls and keep conversations with Dana to text only. Mitch asked one question: whether the voice note she sent to Dana about his private life was the same voice note that had been forwarded to a group chat and heard by members of his family. I asked who told him about the voice note. He said it did not matter who. What mattered was whether the note existed and whether I said what he had been told I said. I said the note was a private message to a friend, and that Dana's mistake was not my fault. He said the note was not leaked to him. It was leaked to his family, to a 68-year-old family friend, and to a group chat with 7 people, and the contents had now been heard by people who would never unhear them. He said my olive branch protected me from future mistakes, but did nothing about the damage already done, and an olive branch that only faces forward is not peace, it is erasure. He carried his glass to the sink and went to the garage. In the garage at 9:30 beside the half-finished birdhouse, Mitch mentioned the project and said he started it 3 months ago with Hugo, but they had not finished it because every Saturday had been consumed by the fallout from my choices. He asked me to name the last thing I did with Hugo alone for more than 30 minutes. He said the birdhouse would be finished this Saturday with or without my awareness, because his relationship with Hugo was not negotiable. He did not offer a compromise. He said he had tried talking, listening, suggesting counselling, and asking for respect, and each time the answer had been mockery, tears, or blame. He said he was done requesting. The birdhouse sat on the workbench with one wall still unattached, the pale unpainted wood lit by the garage's single fluorescent tube, and a sandpaper block rested against the open side, like a project waiting for a hand that had been occupied elsewhere. Tuesday morning at 6:20, Mitch opened the fireproof lockbox on the garage shelf with a small key from a carabiner on his work bag, placed inside it a USB drive labelled with the date of the anniversary party, added a sealed envelope that arrived in yesterday's mail, closed the lockbox, and spun the combination dial. He packed Hugo's lunch with a note inside, reading that Hugo was the best builder he knew and Saturday was project day. When I came downstairs at 7, he was pouring Hugo's milk and humming a song Hugo liked, and his warmth was directed at Hugo, at the cereal box, at the lunchbox, at everything in the room except me. If you're really enjoying my stories, I'd truly appreciate a like and a subscription. Your support helps my channel grow and lets me bring you even more intense, interesting stories. And now let's find out how our heroine's story ends. Monday night at 9:45, the brass pendulum clock in the hallway, a wedding gift from Martine, ticked its steady tap through the bedroom wall while Mitch sat on the edge of the bed, and I scrolled Instagram against the headboard. He mentioned the close friend story I posted Saturday from a wine bar, captioned my real support system with a heart emoji at 11:20 p.m., 2 days after I offered the olive branch that included reducing Dana conversations to text only. He asked whether my real support system meant Dana specifically, or whether it was a public statement that he and Hugo were not part of that system. He asked how many hours I spent with Hugo that weekend versus how many hours I spent curating Instagram content about my friendships, and he listed the schedule from memory. I left Saturday at noon, returned at midnight, left Sunday at 10, returned at 4, which left roughly 3 waking hours in a 2-day weekend where Hugo's mother was present. He said this was the final time he would raise the subject of their marriage as a conversation between two people who share a bed. And he offered one last path, a mediated conversation with a neutral professional, 90 minutes, where both of them could decide together if anything remained worth building. I locked my phone and told him a husband who counts his wife's weekend hours like a timesheet auditor does not want a partner but an employee, and that mediation was for couples who had given up. I said the problem was not the Instagram story. The problem was that he married a woman too alive for the quiet life he wanted. The pendulum clock ticked through the wall, marking the seconds between my last word and his decision not to answer. Tuesday evening at 9 o'clock, I sat on Dana's narrow balcony 3 floors above the street, a glass of rosé balanced on the railing, with Dana, my gym friend Jolene, and my co-worker Serena, who had been at the anniversary party. I told them my version of the past 6 weeks, that Mitch had been emotionally withdrawn since the party, that his family was running a coordinated campaign against me, that Phoebe was obsessed with destroying my marriage, and that Martine had called me a danger at the restaurant, a word I repeated 3 times. I did not mention the voice note, the Thomas comparison, the cocktail lounge lie, the premium gym sessions, or Hugo's repeated phrase. Dana nodded through it. Jolene said I was brave. Serena, who had watched the toast from the 3rd table and seen Gerald set down his flute, asked quietly whether the guided tour line was about Mitch specifically. I said it was comedy, not confession. Through the open balcony door, Dana's roommate Keiko stood at the kitchen counter steeping tea, close enough to hear every word. She did not interrupt. That night she texted Owen Kamari, whom she knew from a volleyball league, and said what she overheard did not match what she witnessed at the anniversary party. Wednesday afternoon, Celia drove to the supermarket parking lot because my mother Sylvie had not returned her calls. They sat in Sylvie's car, engine off, under orange overhead lights. Celia played the voice note. 2 minutes and 14 seconds of my voice, laughing, mocking Mitch by name, comparing him to Thomas, calling him the most predictable man alive in every room of the house. Sylvie's hands gripped the steering wheel, the leather creaking under her fingers. She asked Celia to play it again. When it finished the second time, Sylvie said she raised me to be confident, not cruel, and she did not know when the line between those two things disappeared. She texted Mitch. She said she heard the recording, she was sorry, and whatever he decided, she would not stand in his way. That evening, Sylvie called me and asked whether I said the things on the recording. I panicked and asked which recording and who was sharing my private messages. She repeated the question. I said the voice note was taken out of context, and Celia was a meddling old woman. Sylvie said context does not change content, and that a mother who hears her daughter mock her son-in-law's most private vulnerabilities while a 6-year-old listens from the hallway does not need context. She needs her daughter to stop talking and start listening. Thursday evening at 10:15, in the garage, Mitch sat on the workbench stool beside the finished birdhouse, painted blue and green, Hugo's colours, with a small brass hanging hook. He said someone outside the family had overheard me describe him as emotionally abusive through silence at a friend's apartment this week. He asked me one final time to tell him the complete truth, not the version I told Dana, not the version I told my mother, but the version that included the voice note, the toast, Hugo's words, and the man I saved under a fire emoji. He asked me to look at the birdhouse and tell him whether I could name the colour Hugo chose for the roof, because the answer measured something no Instagram story could show. He said the next step would not be a conversation but a process, and a process does not accept "it was just a joke" as an answer. I told him I was not going to stand in a garage being threatened by a man surrounded by birdhouses and lockboxes, and if he wanted to turn our marriage into a process, then he was the one destroying the family. I walked inside and slammed the kitchen door, and the sound echoed off the garage concrete. The birdhouse sat on the workbench, its blue and green paint gleaming under the fluorescent tube, the brass hook catching the light the way the engraved champagne flute had caught the October sun at the community centre. After Friday's meeting, Grindstone Cafe, 6:45 a.m., Mitch returned in slacks and a dress shirt carrying a padded envelope. He placed it in the fireproof lockbox beside the USB drive and sealed envelope, spun the dial, and went to the kitchen where Hugo was eating waffles. He told Hugo that next week they would hang the birdhouse on the oak tree and Hugo could choose the branch. He changed the emergency contacts on Hugo's school file, removing me as first contact and adding Phoebe. He changed the electric bill autopay from the joint account to his personal account. A sticky note appeared on the garage workbench. Mediation office, bring binder plus USB. Monday morning, I opened the shared laptop and found 2 browser tabs: Mediation Process FAQ and Voice Recording Admissibility. I read enough to understand mediation involved evidence and binding recommendations, and enough about consent laws to understand voice recordings could be used without the other party's knowledge. I closed the tabs. I went to work and posted a story from my reception desk captioned, "Building Things That Last," with a winking emoji. 14 likes arrived within the hour, and none of them were from anyone at the birthday dinner, the anniversary party, or the family group chat. The mediation office was on the 3rd floor of a professional building downtown, and the conference room had neutral carpet, recessed lighting, a long oak table with 8 chairs, and the faint smell of lemon cleaning solution mixing with the stale warmth of an October heating system. A water pitcher and 2 glass tumblers sat at the centre beside a box of tissues. The mediator, Dr. Vasquez, sat at the head with a legal pad and a laptop. Mitch sat to her left in the dress shirt he had worn to every quiet cafe meeting, a navy binder on the table. I sat to her right in the emerald dress I wore to the anniversary party. A choice I told myself was confidence, but that registered in the room's flat light as a costume from a show nobody requested. Dr. Vasquez explained the process and asked Mitch to begin. He opened the binder. Tab 1. The toast video, 2 minutes 41 seconds, played on the laptop. Tab 2. The voice note, 2 minutes 14 seconds, played from the USB drive, my laughter filling the conference room. Tab 3. Child exposure documentation, Celia's signed chronology, Phoebe's screenshot, written statements from Gerald, Martine, and Phoebe describing Hugo's phrase at the birthday dinner. Tab 4. The financial trail, the lounge charge contradicting my stated location, the premium gym booking in Studio B, the Instagram stories screenshotted by Celia showing the bare ring pattern. Tab 5. A timeline showing 9 contradictions between my stated explanations and the documented evidence. Dr. Vasquez asked if I disputed the recordings. I said the voice note was private. She noted this, then said the content constituted a documented pattern of emotional cruelty and child exposure regardless of the original audience, and the toast video corroborated it publicly. She issued a preliminary recommendation: formal separation proceedings with custody evaluation, an immediate joint credit freeze, and a parenting assessment. Mitch closed the binder, thanked her, and walked out without looking at me. I sent the selfie at the anniversary toast to prove I was the most fearless woman in any room. I believed laughter at my husband's expense was confidence, and the louder the audience, the more power I held. But Gerald setting down his flute was not generational discomfort. It was a father watching his son's dignity burned in public. The voice note was not girl talk. It was a recording with a timestamp and a distribution chain that ended on this oak table. And the man I called a guided tour built a binder with 5 tabs that did not laugh, did not cry, and did not accept "it was just a joke" as an answer. Closure snapshot. The first custody handoff is Saturday morning at the front stoop. I bring Hugo's overnight bag and a colouring book from the pharmacy. Mitch stands at the door in jeans and a flannel shirt, Hugo beside him holding a pine cone. Hugo waves and says he wants to show me the birdhouse. It hangs on the oak tree's lowest branch, blue and green, with the brass hook catching the late October light. Through the open door, the hallway clock ticks its brass rhythm, and on the kitchen counter sits a single coffee mug beside Hugo's lunchbox. The lunchbox has a sticky note on top. World's best builder. Saturday is our day. The birdhouse turns slowly on its branch, and the brass hook sends a small circle of reflected light across the lawn, travelling from the stoop to the sidewalk to the street, disappearing the moment a cloud crosses the sun.